move on then. Let's go to the SEC. Back to the well here. I mean, you've had some crazy SEC games these last couple of weeks, in particular last week, and you got another great one here. Ole Miss traveling to LSU. LSU 3.5-point dogs here to an LSU team or to an Ole Miss team that dropped one to Kentucky 2 weeks ago. LSU kind of been, slowly on the rise. They had a scare against South Carolina. They lost to USC. But it looks like they've looked better the last couple of weeks, and I believe Caden Durham is looking all right to play this weekend. If that's the case, then I feel a lot better about this offense because he is such an explosive weapon coming out of the backfield there. I'm not sure what I'm feeling right now because also Jackson Dart, 2 straight weeks, now granted against 2 very good defenses, didn't really look like Jackson Dart. But I'm willing to believe that South Carolina and Kentucky, like we said in our preseason previews, that those 2 defenses could be top half, if not top quarter defenses in the SEC. And I'm just going to believe that that's the case. Okay, LSU, have they played a little bit better on defense this year than they did maybe last year? Oh, yeah, sure. Is that all credit to Blake Baker? I think a lot of it is. I don't know that they necessarily made a ton of personnel changes, or at least the ones that they wanted to, in terms of player personnel. That I think they've looked all right on the defensive side of the football. Not great, not elite, but fine. Ole Miss has kind of struggled to run the ball the last couple of games as well. I think that's a factor that you have to consider. Do they need to run the ball against LSU to win? I don't necessarily think that they do. I'll lay it with Ole Miss 3.5. Don't feel great about it because it's another one of those road short dogs in conference where you got, LSU's undefeated in the SEC. Everything that they want to accomplish is in front of them. Ole Miss is playing a little bit from behind because they did lose to Kentucky. But I think Garrett Nussmeier is really good, but I also think that South Carolina's defensive line got to Garrett Nussmeier. They did. And I think Ole Miss's defensive line is really good. It's looked really good. Walter Nolan has been a monster on this team. I think they're going to find some ways to get to Garrett Nussmeier. I think they're going to generate some explosive plays in the passing game. And I think Ole Miss finds a way to win this football game, even though I think LSU is trending in the right direction. So I feel like there could be some people out there that like LSU in this spot because of the way that they've been playing football and the way that Ole Miss has been playing football. Kind of looks like they're trending in opposite directions. I'm just more of the perspective that I think Kentucky and South Carolina are really good defenses, and that's why maybe Jackson Dart didn't look as good.
Yeah, I like the way LSU's been playing right now. I do think the matchup here is not quite what we love to see here for LSU. I think a lot of people saw them lose against USC, saw them struggle against Nicholls State, right? And saw them struggle at South Carolina. Probably should have lost that football game with one bad football call, one bad penalty on the pick six. But I think they've been getting a lot better since then. They had a bye week to kind of get right, hopefully get a little bit healthy, like you said, with Durham. With that being said, yeah, I'm with you. I like Ole Miss here. I just think that Kentucky game, such a one-off. I was very impressed with how they played, not only offensively, especially in that first half, but defensively, right? Shutting down South Carolina, not letting them get anything, right? Going, putting points on the board here. It's going to be awesome. I think this is a game super exciting. 2 really, really talented quarterbacks, talented receivers, coaching staffs that we love are in polarizing the SEC. Obviously, both teams very alive and well in the SEC. LSU, by the way, is still 1-0 in conference, right? They are still undefeated in the SEC, and a lot of their goals ahead of them. And it starts this week with Mississippi. With Ole Miss, if they're able to get a win here, would be massive. Same being said for Ole Miss, almost a little bit more. They are kind of, this is it, right? They got a tough schedule ahead of them, and they do not want to be chasing wins with Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia still on that schedule. This is big for them to get to their bye week, get a win here, and get a bye week. Yeah, give me Ole Miss minus 3.5. But wow, it's going to be such a good game. Can I ask you a question here? Coaching staff edge here. Ole Miss and Pete Golding. Well, Lane Kiffin and
Ooh,
Pete Golding, right? Brian Kelly and Blake Baker there. What do we got?
man, that's a tough one. Uh, yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not sure if I can say that right now. Lane Kiffin gets up for these games though. You
Yeah.
know, there's some games where he is outclassed in like in terms of talent, and the way that he plays is to win football games. And sometimes that's why you had Ole Miss in the past under Lane Kiffin. There were some games where they got outclassed, and it compounded because they
Yeah.
took those Hail Mary shots, they ran those crazy plays, they took chances on defense. But this is a different Ole Miss team. This is a much more talented Ole Miss team. I think when I'm looking at two teams with equal talent, I don't love Pete Golding. And I don't love Blake Baker yet. I think I'm going to take Lane Kiffin in the coaching matchup. I don't know. Is that crazy? Just because of, I think, when you have equal talent, which Lane Kiffin normally doesn't have, I think Lane Kiffin can do a lot more with it than Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I think barely. And this game, obviously, will determine that. I did see some Alabama fans calling back for Pete Golding, so and
Oh
I would say
yeah,
what you
which
will
is
about that.
wild, by the way. Which is a wild state that we're in.
That's how
Um,
desperate they are right
it's how
now.
desperate they are. But man, yeah, Kane Womack, Maurice Linguist. What are we doing? I mean, what are we doing? But this isn't about Alabama. All right, this is about Ole Miss and LSU. But yeah, I mean, Ole Miss, 10% sack rate, 24 sacks on the season, first in the country. They have, let's see, what is this? 5 players with over 15 pressures, and a sixth one with 14. That's nuts. They're getting after quarterbacks. Granted, maybe the offensive lines that they played against, aka South Carolina, Kentucky, maybe not great, and then some of those other lesser teams that they played. I still think the point stands, though, that they want to get after the quarterback. In LSU, they've only allowed 2 sacks, and I believe on the year, and I believe both of those were in the South Carolina game. But I'm willing to argue that Ole Miss's defensive line is up there with South Carolina in terms of from a pass rushing standpoint. So I think there's a chance that they put Garrett Nussmeier in some binds, which sounds crazy because I know how good LSU's offensive line is and how talented LSU's receivers are and their ability to separate. But I think there's a chance that Ole Miss gets after Garrett Nussmeier. So, but we'll see. I'm pumped for that game, dude. I'm absolutely pumped. Only 3.5 point spread. Huge SEC implications, college football playoff implications. I'm loving it. I'm loving it.